On a quiet stretch of rural highway outside of Elkhorn, Wisconsin, drivers have reported something they can't explain: a massive shape, standing upright, watching from the roadside, or worse, charging straight at their headlights. Some say it looks like a wolf, others swear it's part man, and a few claim it followed them home. Locals call it the Beast of Bray Road, and for decades, whispers and sightings have surrounded this lonely back road based on eyewitness accounts later documented by journalists rather than by physical evidence. Tonight, we're opening the file on Bray Road, what people say they've seen, where the legend may have come from, and why even today the story refuses to fade. I'm May, and this is the Dark Folio. Before we begin, a quick note: this episode is spooky but family friendly. No gore, no graphic content, just eerie history, eyewitness encounters, and unanswered questions. Now, let's start with the road itself. Bray Road is not dramatic. It doesn't twist through mountains or vanish into thick forest. It's flat, open, bordered by farm fields and stretches of grassland that seem to swallow sound. At night, it becomes a long tunnel of darkness. Your headlights feel too small, too dim, and the sky seems lower. The quiet isn't peaceful, it's heavy, like the landscape is holding its breath. Locals say that if anything were to step out onto that road, there'd be nowhere for it to hide, and nowhere for you to escape. Long before Bray Road became a headline, stories of strange creatures circulated throughout southern Wisconsin. Farm communities, especially in the early 1900s, passed down quiet warnings. People spoke of upright animals glimpsed at the edges of fields, shadowy shapes crossing paths at dusk, and wild men, a term used historically for unexplained humanoid figures, long before the word cryptid entered popular vocabulary. One early encounter often linked to the beast's legend is said to have occurred in 1936. According to later retellings, a night watchman named Mark Shackleman was working at St. Coletta School in Jefferson, Wisconsin, when he reportedly saw a large, muscular figure digging at a burial mound on the grounds. He expected an animal, but what he claimed to see stood on two legs. It was covered in dark hair and had long arms and an elongated muzzle. There are no surviving police reports or newspaper articles from the time to verify this encounter, but the description would echo across future decades. Farmers later told of livestock behaving strangely for no clear reason. Stories passed orally, not recorded in agriculture or in veterinary records. Hunters described the unsettling sensation of being watched from tree lines, not by a deer, not by a bear, but by something that felt aware. These early stories form the folkloric backbone of the Bray Road legend, whispers that existed long before the modern wave of sightings. In the fall of 1989, the story entered the public record. A young woman named Lori Indrizzi reported an encounter while driving along Bray Road late at night. Her headlights illuminated something ahead, large, crouched near the shoulder of the road. And at first she thought it was a dog, but as she slowed, she realized that the animal appeared to be kneeling, but kneeling on two legs, like a person. According to her account, later published by journalist Linda Godfrey, the creature stood upright. She described it as over 6 feet tall, covered in gray-brown hair, with pointed ears, a long snout, and eyes that reflected her headlights. She did not claim that it attacked her, but she did report a moment of eye contact that made her feel intensely watched. Shaken, she drove away, and when her account was shared publicly, she did not present it as proof of a monster, only as something that she could not explain. And then something unexpected happened. Other people came forward. This is where journalist Linda S. Godfrey becomes central. At the time, Godfrey was a reporter for the Walworth County Week. She was assigned to investigate reports of a so-called werewolf near Elkhorn. She expected a novelty story, of course, and instead she found witnesses who were reluctant, embarrassed, and often frightened by what they had seen. Many asked not to be named. Some had never heard of the Bray Road story before sharing their own encounter, and their descriptions, given independently, shared striking similarities. Godfrey did not claim that the creature was real. She did not label it as supernatural. Her contribution was documentation. Her article gave the legend its now famous name, The Beast of Bray Road, and once the story entered print, more witnesses contacted her directly. One of the most cited reports comes from 1991, involving Doris, sometimes called Doristine, Gibson. According to her account, she felt her car strike something while driving at night, and when she stopped to check, she reported seeing a tall, hairy figure running toward her. Frightened, she fled. Later, she noticed scratches on her vehicle. There's no photographic or police documentation of these marks, but the detail appears consistently in retellings of her story. Other witnesses describe seeing a large upright figure crouched over roadkill, and when approached by vehicles, it reportedly stood and turned its upper body toward passing cars. Several farmers claim to see tall figures standing silently at the edges of fields or near barns, watching but not advancing. Local law enforcement did receive calls reporting large animals or something strange along Bray Road. Officers responded, but reported finding nothing conclusive. No physical evidence was ever recovered. As Linda Godfrey and later researchers compared accounts, certain patterns appeared within the reports themselves. Most sightings were said to occur late at night, in the fall or in the winter, and near farmland or wooded edges. The descriptions were remarkably similar across all the witnesses. The beast always had an upright posture. It was 6 to 7 feet tall, muscular build, dark fur, with a canine-like head. Now, whether these similarities point to a shared phenomena or to shared expectations, that remains open to interpretation. And a quick pause before we continue. If you're enjoying the Dark Folio, you can follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. And for bonus content and for discussions, go find us on the Facebook page of the Dark Folio. All right, back to the story. So what could it be? Misidentification of bears, dogs, coyotes with mange, or rare wolves remains the most common scientific explanation. Psychological factors like low light, fear, expectation, they also play a role in eyewitness perception. Others see the legend as part of a much older tradition of upright canines found in folklore worldwide. None of these explanations have been proven. What makes the Beast of Bray Road especially interesting is that it didn't appear in isolation. By the time that the Bray Road sightings reached newspapers in the late 1980s and early 1990s, American pop culture was already filled with upright wolf-like creatures. Movies and television had trained audiences to recognize a very specific silhouette. In 1981, one of my favorites, An American Werewolf in London shocked audiences with its realistic transformation scenes, cementing the image of the modern werewolf in popular imagination. I was really young when An American Werewolf in London came out, and I remember watching this and being completely transfixed. I really believe that movie was one of the pivotal movies and points in my life that made me fall in love with the scary movie genre, the horror, the monsters, all of that stuff that I love today. So for those of you listening who love the how as much as the story, then I'm going to go off on a sidebar here, and this part's just for you. The transformation scene in An American Werewolf in London is still considered one of the greatest practical effect sequences ever put on film. Remember, this was 1981. There was no CGI, no digital enhancement, nothing added in post. What you're watching is months of planning, sculpting, engineering, and physical endurance captured on camera. Now, if you are young and you haven't watched this and all you've ever seen is CGI, you need to go back and watch this movie just for the practical effects alone. Special makeup effects artist Rick Baker and his team spent roughly 6 months designing and testing the transformation. They built prosthetics that could stretch, bulge, and shift under the skin, mechanical rigs that simulated bones lengthening, appliance layered so precisely that each stage of the change could be filmed separately. The transformation scene itself took nearly a week to shoot. Actor David Naughton reportedly spent up to 10 hours each morning in the makeup chair, followed by several more hours at night just to remove everything, day after day. And that famous moment, the one that still makes people wince when the snout stretches forward in slow, agonizing detail, that wasn't a trick of editing. It was a mechanical prosthetic head, custom built for that single shot, filmed at the very end of production because of how complex and risky it was to pull off. The result was so groundbreaking that the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences created an entirely new Oscar category, Best Makeup, and Rick Baker won it. Scenes like this didn't just scare audiences, they taught us what transformation looked like, what pain looked like, and what a werewolf was supposed to be. And once an image like that lodges itself into the collective imagination, it tends to stick. A few years later, films like The Howling and Silver Bullet kept the imagery alive. Tall, muscular, intelligent predators that were not simply animals. But to be fair, from everything I've read and heard about the transformation scene in An American Werewolf in London, the practical part of it, the practical makeup, was so hard and so intense that no one really tried to recreate it after that. So now we have CGI and we're kind of used to stuff like that. But back then, it was kind of a one and done. They did it so well, no one really wanted to try to do it again. Shows like The X-Files explored cryptids, shapeshifters, and unexplained creatures throughout the 1990s, often presenting them as phenomena just beyond scientific explanation. In one episode, agents investigated killings linked to what appears to be a modern werewolf, treated not as a fantasy, but as a mystery rooted in folklore and biology. For audiences watching at home, the idea that something ancient could still exist in modern America didn't feel impossible. In 1991, the same year as the Bray Road reports, the game Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles introduced Razor, a humanoid wolf villain, another example of how frequently upright canines appeared in media during this era. Even cartoons reflected the trend. These portrayals don't prove anything about Bray Road, but they do raise an important question. Were people influenced by what they saw on screen? Or were filmmakers and writers drawing from older folklore that existed long before movies ever did? In more recent years, the concept of the Dogman has taken a life on its own. The Dark Folio has even done a podcast on the Michigan Dogman. Go check it out if you haven't heard that one. Television series like Monster Quest and Paranormal Witness featured episodes on upright canine creatures reported across North America. Documentaries and podcasts began grouping Bray Road with similar sightings in Michigan, like the Michigan Dogman I just talked about, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, suggesting a broader pattern. Even if these shows approach the topic skeptically, they've helped keep the legend alive for a new generation. And for some viewers, Bray Road wasn't the beginning of the story. It was confirmation that something they'd already heard whispers about elsewhere. And if you're curious, reports did not end in the 1990s. People continue to come forward privately, often anonymously, sharing encounters that they believe resemble the earlier descriptions. These later reports are anecdotal and unverified, but they do mirror the original stories closely enough to keep the legend alive. Linda Goffrey continued documenting similar cases across North America for more than 30 years. She never claimed proof, and her position remained consistent. People were experiencing something they could not explain. Godfrey passed away in 2022, leaving behind a body of work that preserved these stories, whether they represented misidentified wildlife, psychological phenomena, or enduring folklore. Bray Road is still just a road. In daylight, it's ordinary, but legends aren't built on proof alone. They're built on reputation, on memory, on people seeing something once and never forgetting it. Whether the Beast of Bray Road is an animal, a trick of perception, or a story shaped by time, it remains one of Wisconsin's most enduring modern legends. And sometimes that's enough to make you check your mirrors just a little longer on a dark and empty road. I'm May, and this has been the Dark Folio.